All right. The last but not least, the question that I think has the greatest effect going forward, and the message that maybe we want to work on getting out there. If there's things we could do to control any part of it, as far as how it will roll out. But you mentioned to me last week about a comparable ordinance coming out in all of Cook County that compares to the CRLTO. Tell me about why that came up in recent months, years, and the likelihood it'll pass, and maybe a little that you know about it, and the time frame as well too. Because I told a couple people about it. First thing they ask is when's it going to happen?
Yeah. So as you and your folks know, Chicago has a residential landlord tenant ordinance, and Cook County, my understanding is this was motivated by the coronavirus. Cook County board, so all of Cook County, the board has said, we want to prevent people from being locked out of their rentals, for a failure, if they are a few days late on, this is how they've contexted. If they're a few days late on their rent, we don't want them to get locked out of their rentals. And actually, when you say that, like as a negotiating standpoint, that's actually a good place to start from, because I don't think I think most landlords, we all know the 5-day notice, right? So you do the 5-day notice, and if they pay, well, great. Okay, then we start over, right? I can't speak for everybody, but that's what I've heard is a lot of consensus, right? So it's actually not a bad negotiating place to start from. What's scary is that the proposals that we've heard could move as quickly as by the end of October. And what they're looking at doing is a tenant landlord ordinance that in some ways is similar to Chicago, but in some ways is has some provisions that are could be much more damaging to property investors and landlords. So similarities, it would require no lockouts. So, an anti-lockout provision. It would require that security deposits be kept in an interest-bearing account. Of course, our concern with that is what we've seen in eviction court is that if the amount is off by even a very small amount, the fines and penalties can be insanely high. So we're concerned about that. Differences, so these are a little bit concerning. There's no exemption for smaller or owner-occupied rental units in the Cook County proposal. So basically it would apply to every single rental unit in all of Cook County. We also don't know how it would interact with an existing landlord licensing, like a local ordinance. So that's another cause for concern. Which one's going to take precedence, because there's going to be conflicting aspects. Two more things that are concerning. One is it would ban the use of move-in fees. So a lot of landlords have stopped collecting a security deposit, and instead they're just doing a move-in fee to try to avoid those penalties that can be, lobbed against them if they get the amount wrong. It would ban move-in fees. And then the last one, which just makes my head spin, is that if a tenant abandons the property and leaves their personal possessions, their personal property, couches, mattresses, giant TVs, all those things that we hate to see as landlords when somebody moves out, the landlord would be responsible for storing it in case the tenant ever comes back and says, hey, I want my stuff back. And we're not sure how long they would have to store it. I mean, that one just makes my head spin. If you think about the costs of trying to have a storage unit and what it would cost to try to keep this stuff inventoried. So that's the ordinance, that's the proposal that's out there. What we're trying to do is work with the county and the county board to say, first off, we need to see exemptions for smaller property owners. So we need to see, right now we're saying if you own 15 units or less, you should be exempt. The second thing is, how does this conflict with local ordinances? So we want to talk that out. In terms of a time frame, this will probably get heard in committee sometime in October. And what we're trying to do, again, is not have it be rash. We just want to try to have plenty of discussion on this to make sure that it just doesn't move too quickly, and that, you know, we don't have unintended consequences.
So they have, there's, man, it blows my mind. So has there been, I guess I don't see it on our side of things, and I don't see too many unhappy tenants. Like, I mean, outside of Chicago, has there been issues that have really led to this, or is this just more regulations, people pushing more regulation for the sake of pushing more regulation?
I mean,
or somewhere between.
One of the county board members was a little bit trite when they were asked, why are you encouraging this right now? And they said, well, because I like regulation. And I mean, they were just kind of flippant. I think, you know, in more deliberate talks with some of the county board members, the reality is kind of what I talked about before. You have that small group of bad landlords that ruins it for everybody else, because what they tell me, the county board members and their staff, is, you know, we hear the stories, we get the phone calls of, you know, the person who's had their water shut off, you know, or whatever thing that happens. And so they want to try to go after those bad landlords. Our pitch is like, there are ways to go after the bad landlords that isn't going to penalize every other, you know, the other 90% of landlords that are doing a good job and have a good relationship with their tenants. So I think the reality is they do hear from constituents that have negative experiences, tenants, but also, you know, just doing regulation for the sake of regulation is, I mean, as we know, that costs dollars and cents. And anytime that you're manipulating or distorting the market, that's going to have a negative impact for people.
Yeah. And then no non-refundable moving fees. we do that pretty much in Chicago. But on the flip side, though, so that actually makes housing more affordable for a lot of people in Chicago, because instead of having to bring all that money to the table, they bring maybe sometimes a third less.
So actually, I can understand why that would be your initial impression, right? But what do you think is going to happen if you don't want to charge a security deposit and you can't charge a move-in fee? What do you think landlords are going to do?
Raise rent?
I think there's a pretty good chance that those costs will be offset by rents going up.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
And so, I mean, that's one of the pitches is like, what we do is we try to educate the elected officials to have them understand these are pretty simple numbers, that, you know, when you buy a property, there's costs and then there's income, and there has to be some level of profit in between the cost and the income in order to operate. And when you start to increase those costs with things like storage fees or taking away, you know, a move-in fee or a security deposit, you're going to have to find ways to offset those costs through income, right? So I don't know if that's an effective argument, but I mean, at this time when rentals, when housing has already become so unaffordable, we're trying to educate elected officials that when you add these regulations, it actually drives up the cost of housing, makes it more expensive for people.
Yeah. So 80, I think it's 82 or 83 communities now have rental licenses, which adds another, I describe it as another layer of cost between getting the annual fee, getting it inspected, the handful of things you might fail for inspection. Some of the cities actually are harsher than others, which you have to almost budget a few percent in for whatever they're going to make you fix that year.
Right.
So yeah, no, you hit it spot on, where these layers add on additional fees that have to be recouped somewhere, and it's not going to be in property tax relief, right?
Right. Of course.
Cool. So how does that? So going forward, I mean, this sounds like it's hitting pretty fast here. What can investors do, or realtors do, or what do your members? What can we do to help put our word in? I guess our opinion in, or.
Yeah. So for realtors, what I would encourage you to do is go to illinoisrealtors.org and check out our advocacy page. And if you're a realtor, definitely sign up for our calls for action. So you should, if you're a realtor, you're going to get the email, but a lot of times when we send a mass email, it's going to go to your junk folder. I mean, it's just the reality. So sign up for our text messages. So you can text to the number 30644. If you pull out your phone and pull up your text message, 30644. The message is realtors, and hit send. Then you're going to be enrolled in our text message calls for action. And I anticipate, I mean, unless negotiations go really, really well, I anticipate that we're going to end up doing a call for action in October. So you'll get a text message, click on the link, and that's going to take you to a message that you can send to your county board member. So it's basically you click a few buttons, and then you'll get a message sent to your county board member. So that's the easiest, least time consuming way. If you're not a realtor, what you can do is check out, we have a website, realpropertyalliance.org, or if you just Google Real Property Alliance, we've got information up there about how non-realtors can get involved in these issues. Again, we've got like a newsletter sign up, and when a hot issue strikes, you know, we alert everybody. So that would be my suggestion. Sign up for the text messages, and then Real Property Alliance if you're not a realtor.
What's that text number one more time?
30644, and the message you'll send is realtors.
All right. I'll make sure I add that in this video in the links.